Started. What is Empowering Blue? So what we envision Empowering Blue to be is a community for staff and faculty who are interested in improvement, change, and innovation. Each time we meet, we're going to learn about a particular topic. We're going to connect. So our goal is that each of these meetings, we provide an opportunity for you all to make new connections or strengthen existing connections that you have. And we really want to build a community in this venue. That's our goal. We're going to share information. So that means we want to know what we can do to help you or what you can do to help someone else. We'd like to use this opportunity to share resources, connections, and learning across the university. And we really hope these sessions also inspire folks. So we want to know what you're going to do with what you learn here. How can you empower others with this learning? How can you take this back and use this in your home department or unit or school? Additionally, this is the list of the Empowering Blue team. So these are the planning group folks that help facilitate these meetings and bring them together. So if you have any ideas for anything you want to do or comments about any of these, you can reach out to any of these people here, and we can see how we can incorporate those comments into future Empowering Blue meetings. I would like to point out that we have one new member since our October meeting. Sarah Button from Rec Sports joined us this month. So thank you, Sarah. We're excited to have you on our team. And that is all of my background information. So I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce Michael so that he can talk us through his talk. So I'm going to stop sharing. And screen moved all around, sorry. So Michael Worden has been part of Michigan Medicine Community since 2012 and currently serves as the Senior Director of Business IT, which provides a central focus on strategic product adoption to support common service delivery across Michigan Medicine. Their focus is on units who manage foundational services for their customers, such as IT, HR, compliance, communications, faculty affairs, and on supporting faculty, staff, and learners who rely on the products and services. Their goal is to transform the way we work across Michigan to get things done. Michael has served in several roles at Michigan Medicine, from research applications to strategy to performance improvement and service management. He is passionate about a positive, energetic culture, and his interests include building strong teams and providing great service to faculty, staff, and learners. Michael holds a Master's of Business Administration from the Ross School of Business and is focused on organizational behavior and strategy. He has extensive experience in strategic planning, leadership, and management, and he is joining us today to share through storytelling Michigan Medicine's journey to flexible first workforce and workplace. So go ahead, Michael.
Thank you so much for making the time. And though you mentioned 2012, I think my time in Michigan Medicine started in about 2001. I took a little break, so I've got that little pause of a internship in the real world, is what I call it, when I went outside and started working with other universities, and my block M showed through my suit so much that I had to come running back to Michigan. And that was bred in my time as an undergrad here, trumpet in the Michigan Marching Band, leading the lines out, and just struggling through that game on Saturday. So I will do my best to find some joy today, but that was a painful one. Back in my day, I'm realizing is now more than 20 years ago. So I'm feeling nice and old, but we will get through that together, is what I'll say. So I think I see some friendly faces on screen here. It's really nice to see some folks that I've interacted with in the past. The first thing I want to say is, before I share my slides, all I'm trying to do is tell the story of the lessons and the experiences that are really a reflection of the incredible people across the different teams that I've worked with, folks that happen to be inside my organization, but much more so the people outside the organization that bring all these different perspectives here to get things done. So hopefully you see yourselves in some of these things. This is about me trying to tell the story of what I think has helped to enable remote work. The question that was kind of raised here was, we've been doing remote work and flexible work style since long before COVID. So the question that Carl and the group worked with me ahead of time was, what do we have to share? You know, we had some things in place before COVID. We've gone through the COVID experience, and really, what is it that's setting us up to be, to the purpose of Empowering Blue, the most effective and flexible we can, and how have we led change that experience? So I've got a lot of slides that I've put together. I'm going to breeze through a number of them. I want you guys to look at some of these things after the fact. or check the recording out, but I'm going to go over some things with some pace. I see some folks from my team on here smiling because I think they're used to a little bit of that. But I'm trying to really get to the thread through the story, not a bunch of the details, but I want to do that by telling the story of what we've experienced. So sit back and enjoy, and I'll try and have this be a narrative that tells the story in the right way. All right. So the first thing I will do, though, is confirm. Can I get a thumbs up that you guys can see my screen okay? All right. So the broader title here is Lessons Learned from Teams Working in Hybrid and Remote Environments. And as I said, I'm Michael Warden. I'm the Senior Director for Business IT. I've got my contact information here. I love nothing more than connecting with people across the university that are trying to get things done. So please do not hesitate to reach out. I can connect directly or connect you with some of my teams, but I'm hoping this opens the door to some interesting topics. So we're going to talk about three main things today. First, kind of who is this team that's talking about these things? How does that fit? Who am I and what the heck is Business IT? A little bit of our history of our story of going through flexible work, but really the takeaways I want to try and get to at the end here. I'm totally stealing this format from somebody at the University of California, San Francisco that gave a really impressive talk. He did 5 things each, but I'm just going to do 3, which is, I think if you really want to embrace hybrid and remote work, there are 3 things that you have to have, and there are 3 things or a few things that you need to develop, and then 3 things that you need to teach everybody. And so we'll zero in on those things you need to develop and the things that you need to teach. And it starts from this. So though we're going to talk about flexible work, my belief is that working remotely and working in a flexible environment has a whole lot less to do with being remote and a whole lot more to do with how we have conceptualized what it means to work together. That the fact that we're remote really just introduces a new perspective on things that have been latent or perhaps misunderstood for a long time. My belief is that the clearer that your team understands their purpose and understands what I refer to as systems of work, the way we get things done, where they are becomes less and less important. And we believe this for a very long time. And I think the story of COVID through the lens of Business IT and HITS was just why were we in a position to have the results that we saw, I believe was a byproduct of some groundwork we laid for years ahead of time. You'll see these 3 icons here at the bottom show up sometimes throughout the talk. They'll refer to one of the things I know this group cares about, the lenses or the perspectives on organizational change. So this is an organizational change paper on 3 perspectives from John Van Manen from MIT that really talks about that if you want to think about how you change or operate an organization, there are 3 lenses to think about. The strategic lens, which is future focused, where all action comes through planning. What should we be in the future? The cultural lens, which is that our past informs who we are and that the action about cultural change comes through helping to address people's habits. And that the political lens is kind of the current state where action comes through power, not in a negative way, just where do you go to get people to agree that this is the right thing to do to align folks across the organization. And you'll see throughout here, we think about this 3 lenses approach to organizational change in almost everything that we do. Where should we be going? What is the culture that tells us about where we've come from to bring us to today? And where really are the decision makers across the organization that can influence or shape what happens next? And you'll see these things come throughout the talk here. This is something I think really helps to understand and to drive change in the university setting. So who are we? First of all, HITS is a byproduct of many, many changes over time. The biggest one I would say that influences who HITS was in 2016 when Michigan Medicine reformed and started to form a very different leadership structure across the academic medical center portion of the university. We integrated a number of different IT groups together, namely MSIS and MCIT, through a project we called Unity to form HITS. And that prompted us to really step back and say, well, who do we need to be as an IT organization to serve the 40,000 people that work within Michigan Medicine and to address the tripartite elements of the mission of both clinical care, research, and education, and run $5 billion plus business in Michigan Medicine. We had to think of a lot about who we are, and we formed as HITS in that time. I represent just one of the 6 major divisions within Business IT, or within HITS as Business IT. There's just a quick snapshot of the leadership team there. But the way we describe this in Michigan Medicine is that we have 3 groups within HITS that focus on the customer. The first is academic IT that worries about the education and research missions and the needs of the medical school. clinical and revenue cycle IT worries about the clinical mission and worries about the needs of U of M Health. What business IT does is it fits in between there and says, well, there's a whole lot more that happens at Michigan Medicine that isn't directly research, education, or clinical care. And that's what business IT looks after. So we have a unique position in the organization where sometimes we're implementing systems because they're unique to Michigan Medicine, but a lot of times we're connecting in with parts of Central Campus that are intended to serve Michigan Medicine, but might need some help navigating into our broader landscape. I see Tad's on the line today. I'm working right now with the Shared Services Center on how we do some COVID-19 reimbursement processing all the way through into the SSC. Interacting with team dynamics with our system. So those are the kind of things that business IT is starting to address. We've only existed since 2019 as part of a change just before COVID hit, but we're glad that we were formed up at that time. And the three verticals, academic, business, and clinical, really bridge also into those enterprise layer technology teams within HITS, our technology services, our infrastructure, and our data teams. But on the left-hand side here, you can see that what we try and do is bring together service delivery and bring together strategic products to influence just how work happens across Michigan Medicine as best as we can. Here's a little bit of a functional org chart where you can see I've got some service-focused teams and some product-focused teams. For this group, I would draw some attention to within my service management division and customer success divisions, there's a customer experience team that cares deeply about organizational change management and a service analysis and improvement team that cares deep about systematic process and process improvement and learning. So I see Mike Jacobs, for example, is on from our SAI team. Those two teams are groups. As soon as I learned about this group, I said, plug into Empowering Blue, because that's what we care about, is systematic improvement and the voice of the customer. But a broader overview there of the overall scope that we cover. So within business IT, we have a history of flexibility. So we have been doing remote work of some form through since the mid 2000s. So again, thinking about those three lenses, we'll start with how does the past or culture influence where we are today? So we've embraced flexibility for a long time. We have employees today, and we have had employees for more than a decade that are flexibly working from either staying at home in an Ann Arbor-based location or in the state in Kalamazoo, folks who work in California or Florida, South Carolina. But we've had probably my favorite story I'll tell a little bit about is Gray Carper is an incredible analyst in one of our teams that has worked full-time from Hong Kong for more than a decade, which has been an absolute wonderful experience for us to learn how do you flip everything on its head to figure out how do you not only have somebody who's not in the office, but their hours are exactly the opposite of ours. So Gray works when we're all asleep and he's sleeping when we're all awake. And we have learned a lot through that structure about how to support flexible work. When we first started doing this, though, we started saying, you know what, we need to tell the story a bit more because the culture is not going to understand something that is foreign to it. So years and years ago, it was about in 2015, we asked some of our teleworkers to start just doing a little profile of what is your day like? So Deborah Haslam in Florida was talking about how being closer to her grandkids brought more richness to her life, and it blended really well with her ability to work remotely. Gray on the right-hand side in Hong Kong talked a lot about how he stayed connected and how he approached technology in a tiny little Hong Kong apartment when working with us across the globe, and sometimes went into really detailed deep dives of here's how I approach project management and here are some patterns I've learned in working remotely. Fun little post here about how I manage projects from the moon, because that's what it felt like to people, is you must be on the moon somewhere because I don't know what's going on. But we spent a lot of time talking about how we work so that it became shared knowledge, even though those people weren't visible. And so this formed a bit of our identity, but it was always done as an exception. So in that 2015 timeframe, we said, there are exceptions where people say my spouse is moving. That's kind of what brought Gray to Hong Kong, or my family is moving, or I've got my grandkids are somewhere else. Could I consider working remotely? And we said, yes, we want to support that, but it was always an exception. And there was always a request for approval, and it was treated as a special case that was for staff that proved themselves. But we asked ourselves in 2015 to say, where's the world going? And why are we asking this as an exception? And we started to shift it instead to say, why can't I work remotely? How do we start from the perspective that everyone has a place of working from home? Because we were already doing it at the time. Everyone had Comcast appointments that were 8 hours long that you check your email from home on. So we said, let's just lean into it a bit more. And instead of asking for approval, we looked more for endorsement of concrete plans. And instead of them being special cases, how do we start to assume this is the default where there aren't special circumstances required? And it's more about when, not if, I'm going to be working remotely as part of my job. How do we set that up for success? What that taught us was that in most of those experiences, what we learned was that it was never a problem that working remotely raised that didn't already exist on site. It was more that when somebody said, well, I'm going to be remote, how do I let you know what I'm working on? We would say, well, how do you do it today? And they're like, I don't know, but you can see me in my cubicle. You must know what I'm working on. What we really uncovered was that working remotely didn't change any realities. It just drew into stark contrast the assumptions that happen in the organization. Like when people say, well, I can see that person sitting at their desk. I know they're working on their project. We're like, you really don't. They could be on Facebook. You don't know what's happening, but what matters? What are the outcomes that you're measuring? How do you know what your teams are ever working on? Really opened up some very different understanding of how managers should be thinking about the work and their role in supporting their teams, raised questions about trust. But we learned a lot of that through those early folks who embraced it and really opened up about how they managed things and what was working and what was successful. And a huge credit goes to them. We didn't have anyone that worked remotely that was a failure. Everyone was excited, they were more engaged, and they worked really creatively to make things work. So just like everybody else, COVID happened. Business IT had just formed right before COVID hit, and we were looking at, we think there's incredible possibility around digital transformation. And the question was, should the CIO be the business driver? Should the CEO be the business driver? What C-suite executive is going to lead our digital transformation? It was the COVID that really led our transformation. So that's my dad joke that I get to share. I'm just going to breeze by these. The impact of COVID on us was massive, just like it was for everybody. The service desk in every measure turned into a Loch Ness monster of demand and wait times. We put up, but we responded pretty well though. We put up dashboards of transparency immediately. This was our I think a couple weeks in, real-time dashboard of what demands, projects, requests, changes were happening. We were able to track rapidly across the organization. We built dashboards for our command centers in the hospital to understand what critical priority issues were going on, what director on call issues were coming up. We activated volunteers. We started making visibility around supply chain early on to make sure that our laptops were all visible. We responded really, really quickly to a world that needed us differently in Michigan Medicine. But we also put out a lot of things really quickly. We put our HITS tech guide to working remotely up. ITS was doing something very similar around the same time, but we were able to start pivoting and adapting very quickly while our staff were going home. We activated virtual agent and chat support, which was something that was on our roadmap. We did that in about a week. We did a big change towards knowledge-based implementation to support our users, because we knew they couldn't get through the phones. We built up drive-through computer distribution and telework requests for clinical users that were going off-site that didn't have Wi-Fi in their towers and couldn't take computers home. We had a huge impact, but as I'll show near the end of the talk here, we had a really successful experience of that transition. And that included for us sending the service desk home, sending folks who had never worked anywhere other than a call center in the data center. Every single person in HITS started working remotely in roles that people had always said, I support remote work, but not the call center. I mean, they always have to be on site. We took the approach to say, well, why not? Why can't they? Let's work the problem rather than assume it doesn't work that way. And we have been universally successful in being a fully remote first organization now within business IT, running a 24/7 service desk, running major incidents and recovery and downtime procedures. During that time, we've even had data center power outages that we were able to recover from. So really, we found that the transition went very smoothly for us, and we were able to be a really valuable partner to the people that needed us. But where we're taking that is, well, what worked? I mean, I think we've all experienced that rapid move to remote was empowering. There were a lot of positives. I mean, there are a ton of negatives that come with the world right now, but a lot of this ability to work remotely really proved a case that I think a lot of us believed was possible. Even some of our detractors of, I get remote work, it's just not for me, are now saying, it really is for me. It's really working well. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the behavioral things that we did. But where we're at now is we're actually pivoting that to long-term strategic planning for the future. So we've now embraced the concept of flexible first, not only in HITS, but across Michigan Medicine. Flexible first is our description that we don't exactly know what the future is going to hold, but we know it's going to hold flexibility, whether it's on-site, off-site, personal devices, corporate devices, mobile devices, the cloud, whatever is out there, flexibility is here to stay and is actually an empowering part of our employee experience for everyone, faculty, staff, learners. So what do we learn from it to keep it going? We ran into, as we were remote, we started talking about, well, how do we sustain this? So we decided as Business ID to continue to focus on flexibility, and our focus on delivery of results is really what drives us. Where you sit doesn't matter. We do continue. We planned to, and this is from about a year ago. We plan to continue extensive remote work regardless of what happened with physical facilities. We had a renovation plan for where our call center sits. It was about $1 million renovation that we just canceled and said, don't spend those dollars on us. We're good working remotely. The only mandate around physical presence for us is to ensure that continuity of patient care continues. And that even has not been something that's required us to be on site. We've been able to be creative around that continuity. And that we embrace the fact that our success of that transition laid the foundation for us to continue to be a more flexible workforce, and that we actually believe that our reduction to our physical space allows us to consume less of the university's resources so they can use them on those things that are more unique. So all those things were true very early on in our transition in COVID, and we kind of cemented them in. We're now talking about more like 85% of our workers we don't think ever need to come in at any time. We do have a small percentage that as we start to open back up some of our Help Me Now locations, which are like Genius bars for us, we'll have a very small percentage of staff who might need a little bit of a dedicated physical presence for services that are in person. Or there's some staff who might need continuity in the event of a disaster. Do I have a place that I can go work from if the network goes down in the Ann Arbor area, but we need to keep the hospital up? But the vast majority of what we're planning for now is to stay remote. Before COVID, we used to think about different people worked remotely at different times. The way we're using our space now is more, everyone's going to be remote and flexible, but there might be days that we come in and do some strategic planning as a team, but more about building the connections with our team, not doing work. So it's not about, can I come into a docking station and 2 monitors? It's, can I come into some whiteboards and some space for us to brainstorm? That's the kind of, or can I come in just so we can bring in food and celebrate, but be appropriately socially distanced? All of those things are the ways we're trying to cement in what our flexible first workforce is. So this is a slide that your units might like. We use this when we tried to tell the story of what is HATS doing when we started helping to lay the groundwork for Michigan Medicine's broader flexible first approach. And this was more just writing down in one slide, what did we learn about our formula? And the first is that you need a leadership vision for a remote first, flexible first workforce. You need leadership who are able to talk about why it's important, what components are necessary, how we're going to go about doing it, who's there to help. But we really think you can think about that flexible first journey in 4 buckets. You got to think about all the people elements, the workforce elements, about roles and expectations and trust. But you'll see some things in here that this isn't so much about where you work. It's more about how do you develop a support network for managers who need advice? How do you focus on trust and transparency? And how do you focus on results? In your facilities, you have to recognize that your space is going to change, and we're going to design that space to be flexible first. Set some expectations about how things are used so that people are operating from a common framework, but figuring out your physical workspace is an element. Everyone's, I think, addressing this. How do you deal with equipment and supplies in a workforce that's distributed? We're again trying to challenge people to be creative. Instead of saying I need a printer because I need to print that form out so I can sign the paperwork and scan it back in and attach it to that form, can we design that process to not require a signature anymore? Pretty please. Are some of the ways we're thinking about that, but also recognizing you have to get ahead of those things that are really important to our workforce's well-being, like ergonomic safety elements, healthy work settings. But perhaps the most important is the leadership backstop to say, we're going to talk about when flexible work is successful, not if. Remind the team that we can learn together, that we're a learning organization, that we can trust and take experiments and really think differently. But how do we tell the stories and celebrate the successes of what's out there? So this is kind of our in one page story of what we would recommend to anyone that's thinking about trying to sustainably long-term have a flexible first organization. So hopefully that's of some use to the group here. As we transition this into Michigan Medicine wide, this turned into a committee that said, yeah, Michigan Medicine is actually going to be embracing that flexible first makes sense for all of us. So we've now got a Michigan Medicine wide committee that worked on executing the recommendations from the WISE subgroup and adapting some of those things into the Michigan Medicine context. But here you're talking about, you see the tone right from the beginning that we wanted to help build transparency and trust about what is possible. We wanted to support organizational change and align towards consistency. Nothing in here was about control or compliance. It was much more about support and enablement and alignment across the organization. And so far, that's been really generally very well received. And that's led into a whole bunch of stuff that's happening. So we've now got, as part of the Michigan Medicine intranet, a place where we're talking about our flexible first efforts. We're engaging people, sharing news and headlines and issues that are going on. But we're now pivoting that into, well, what's left? What are the gaps in terms of how we work remotely? And that's where the other strategic element as we look forward is we're really trying to change the way we approach the tools we use to be productive and collaborative. One of the things that went okay during the rapid transition to working remotely was that Zoom got rolled out from ITS. We worked closely on helping that to get rolled out in Michigan Medicine as well. We started grabbing some different tools, but as time has passed, we're starting to realize that everyone kind of made do, but to long-term successfully sustain remote work, we need to make sure we've got a IT tool set, and this is kind of the business IT angle on it, that enables productivity and collaboration, individual productivity, team-based collaboration, and organization-wide collaboration. So we kicked off a program about a year ago around productivity and collaboration in general, where we're trying to enable our ability to be collaborative and to work as a team, to connect more deeply with our colleagues, with our collaborators on campus, and with our partners across the state, and to then increase our ability to rapidly and consistently respond to individual, team, and organizational needs in a modern workplace. You'll notice none of this talks about when you work at home, because it assumes flexibility, that you're going to need these things no matter where you are, whatever device you're on, however you're getting these things done. For Michigan Medicine, and we're a little different, we have a high data sensitivity clinical environment. We are rolling out Microsoft 365 right now as the strategic platform for collaboration across Michigan Medicine. A few stats this group might be interested in, for example, is we get almost 2 million emails a day sent from Michigan Medicine people to other Michigan Medicine people. So we think if we can get folks into more collaborative environments, we can just reduce that unbelievable burden of 2 million emails a day internal to the organization. That's more than the total email that we get coming in from the outside to Michigan Medicine on a daily basis. So the calls are coming from inside the house, the problem that we need to solve. And we're actively rolling out a whole bunch of different tools that take that working collaborative environment and just start to enhance them and bring them together more. Tools around collaborative project management are coming, more automation, more things like Microsoft Teams rolled out across the organization. But this was a little bit of us taking the door that had been opened with the transition to COVID and making sure that we long-term make it sustainable by giving people tools that'll make their day more successful across the organization. So let me come back to that. So that's kind of our COVID story. I wanted to get through that a bit. But I want to then say, okay, so we transitioned well. We had some history that set us up for success. We transitioned very positively. You'll see some stats at the end about how our customers felt about how business IT and HITS responded. And we're pivoting that into long-term sustainability strategically going forward to say, great, we're going to chalk that wheel now that we've rolled it up the hill and we've changed as an organization. How do we prevent ourselves from backsliding into older behaviors, and how do we cement it going forward? Again, to me, that has very little to do with the fact that we're remote, and it has much more to do with the fact that our organization was ready with our purpose and with our systems of work to help make those things happen. And so that's the last part here is the real takeaway for me is, well, how do we make sure that we teach that to everybody across the organization? So that's where we'll talk about this as 3 things to develop and then 3 things to teach. And this is a little bit of kind of opening the hood to how business IT operates. I hope this is of interest. If not, I apologize, but I'd love your feedback if it is the kind of things that you want to learn more about. So the first thing that you need to develop in order to have an organization that's ready for this kind of rapid transition is to have a really good sense of purpose, where you understand not just what you do and how you do it, but why you do it. A big part of how we responded rapidly in the beginning of COVID was that our purpose was so clear. It was our job as business IT and HITS to keep our clinicians seeing the patients in this global pandemic that was unfolding. It was one of those moments that you could really feel like the work that you did every day made a difference in the world. We were the ones helping to figure out, well, how do you work out the logistics of rapid vaccine distribution? That purpose was never more clear than in those moments of COVID, but it really took the teams kind of to that next level to realize we really had a job to do that was worth doing well. And that again, visually is more about saying, instead of I'm a senior director in business IT and I manage projects and strategic objectives, what I will tell people is I'm a senior director in business IT because I believe that what IT does in shaping how work gets done at Michigan Medicine makes the academic, clinical, and research missions of Michigan Medicine work better. And if Michigan Medicine works better, the university works better. And if the University of Michigan works better, the whole world changes. That's why I do what I do every day. And yeah, it happens to be tickets and projects, but the why is a really important part of what we do. So when we orient the organization in business IT, we start from understanding, well, who are the people we serve? What do they need? So we talk about that our customers are the folks who lead and organize us, who provide our infrastructure and resources, the people who keep us safe, the people who help us recruit and grow, the people who build those relationships. And our job is to say, well, how many of those areas depend on technology every day? And how many have a defined technology strategy? And when we share that, people step back and go, every single one of those groups depends on technology. And I don't know if they have a strategy. Let's go find out, because there's something we can do to help make them better. That's why we do what we do. And then it translates into the how and the what every day. And you'll see this in our mission statement of who we are. We focus on strategic products and service delivery to achieve a practical and efficient environment for business to thrive in Michigan Medicine every day. We focus on the needs of our customers that are not academic or clinical, but are necessary to run a multi-billion-dollar academic medical center. We believe that the solutions we implement, the services we provide in our everyday directions can transform Michigan Medicine. We're unafraid of taking the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. I'll come back to that as a change management principle. We use our voice, we share our perspective and the lessons we've learned. We embrace the idea that, yeah, we're the technology people, but I think that's who you need right now. So we embrace that and we use our voice. We try and be patient and understanding, and we're kind. We try and build relationships. We want to help everybody, but we also embrace accountability, that at the end of the day, we're accountable for what we do. And we work really hard to be an organization that does the little things right. And in aggregate, we believe we can transform the way we work across Michigan Medicine to get things done. So you'll see that purpose is built into who we are. And from your first day working in business IT, we try and set up your onboarding, your orientation to align to purpose first. Second thing you then know is, okay, I know why I exist and I know why I'm here, but where are we going? What's our concrete vision of the future of how we want to work together as a team? And you'll see a lot of memorizable things in the business IT formula or the HITS formula. For example, when we talk about how do we approach the service desk and customer service and walk-up service and remote service and 68000 and help diet, everything comes back to, we believe in a consistent customer experience, and we've defined it. It's actually defined by our service desk agents. But we believe that every single customer interaction should be simple, correct, and direct, delivered with empathy, efficiency, and pride. That is the vision for what every interaction should be. And then we ask everyone, do you think that we're in that state of accomplished? Is it always simple, correct, and direct with empathy, efficiency, and pride? And the answer is absolutely not. And we say, great, what could make it better? What could make it simpler? What could make it more correct? What could make it more direct? What would allow us to deliver our services with more empathy, more efficiently, or to take more pride in what we do? And that true north infuses all of our projects and our service operations. We then measure those things, though, in really concrete ways. So when we talk about we view that customer experience be important, we run an NPS survey. We have been for years and years now, where we can tell you very concretely, how do our customers feel about us and how do we feel about ourselves? We use that to drive satisfaction on every single incident that we close across the millions that we closed over the last few years. We hear back from our customers, what do you think? That feedback loop fuels that customer experience. So we're able to say, what exactly are we changing and is it making an impact on what we're here to do? We also define very concretely what we care about and what makes it healthy. So we talk about 4 pillars in business IT being healthy services, healthy products, healthy teams, and healthy relationships, where I, without having the slide up, could tell you that a healthy product has an engaged business owner, an accountable technical owner, it's secured by IA, it's funded for life cycle, and it has a published roadmap. So we define these really concrete things of what we're looking for so that we can say without judgment, is that product healthy or not? Well, it's pretty healthy. We've got a really good technical owner. We've got a clear roadmap. It's assured and funded, but there's not really a business owner. So let's go find a really concrete business owner to make sure we're meeting the institution's needs. Each of these healthy definitions has depth underneath it through measurement or through practices or through coaching that is there to help dig into these things to say, if we do this in combination, we believe we can run what we call healthy IT. And in any of those, it goes into those details like I just rattled off. And we think that concrete vision, to be very specific about what that means and make it simple enough to make it memorizable, we think we can get somewhere. The third thing we think is necessary to develop is a leadership backstop. You need to have both above my pay grade and throughout the management team. We think it's really necessary to embrace that leadership's job is to actively reinforce the culture that we seek to build. If I say I want everyone to have really healthy work-life balance, and then I go ask them to do things on the weekend, then I'm not being the kind of leader that I need to be to reinforce that culture. So we've got a little bit of a formula we'll talk about. We want to form healthy teams, healthy products and healthy services, healthy relationships, establish a portfolio. But the last two are sometimes the most important to us, which is how do we find balance in what we're doing and how do we have fun while we're doing it? We have to find that joy. An example of finding balance is my organization will hear me say all the time that there's a very clear order of priority, that the very first thing you have to do is take care of yourself. If you aren't taking care of yourself, sleeping well, eating well, exercising, mental health, whatever that is, then you can't be there to do the rest of what you need to do. Then your family and loved ones come next, and then your team's health, and then the work. And if we believe if we put those things in priority, we'll have the right level of engagement. We'll have a satisfied team that's aligned to purpose, and the work that comes out the other side is incredible. So one of the very first things we did when we started embracing the idea that people could work wherever was you have to take care of yourself and your family and loved ones. If your family and your loved ones are moving to Hong Kong, we're still invested in you. Keep working here. Let's just get creative about how we take care of you and your loved ones, and you can stay connected to making a difference at Michigan. You know, that Block M is people want to stay connected to around the world. We also want to really have some fun with it, though. So when we teach big principles, like when we're rolling out platforms, I refer to myself as Captain Vanilla, because vanilla is the best of flavors. Just like Henry Ford said, you can have any Model T you want as long as it's black. We believe that vanilla is the best of flavors because this is what we strive for in all of our products and services. And if anyone here is familiar with how Michigan traditionally approaches things, because we are very, very special, we often say that our requirements are this. So we'll say, well, it's Michigan, so we need everything a little bit special and a little bit different. We'll sometimes end up here. We have a lot of fun with the idea that we embrace vendor best practices and vanilla implementations and minimizations of customization by just having some fun with it and saying, hey, is it vanilla? And people can have a good laugh with it, because sometimes people say it's still vanilla, it's just got a lot of sprinkles on it. So we have a little bit of fun with that while we're trying to keep that going forward. And then when we think about what you need to teach, so if you have a defined purpose, a clear vision, and a leadership backstop, you then need to set the entire organization up to be successful within that framework. And the first is we believe that you have to teach what I refer to as systems of work, which is how do we, and this is perhaps the most important thing about remote work, how do we have common methods of how we work together? Are our mental models aligned about how things happen every day? So we do a lot of work around systems of work or mental models. The most important across all of HATS is what we refer to as our investment life cycle, which is everything that we do belongs somewhere in this circle. It's either an idea in demand management of something that we could do or that we should do. It's an active project that's something that we're doing where we're making sure we're achieving the benefits that we're doing, or it's something that's in operations that we want to make sure we're actively managing that investment. And we believe it is a cycle in the sense that whatever we're doing today is going to inform the things we need to do tomorrow. So we've done a ton of work to build that out into all kinds of different ways that we teach. We have a course, for example, we have HATS 101 and 102. I think we call HATS 102 now How We Work, or How HATS Works, which goes through and takes the example of an individual person and works through all the systems of work we've put in place to do demand management, to manage knowledge and projects, request management, incident management, change management, all around that purpose of the services that we're here to provide to our customers. The little person you see up in the right-hand corner there is Joy, and we say that Joy is the person that's working on how to manage her services. So we teach those classes, and then we wrap them with measurement and really simple green, red, are we on track or not in monthly operational metrics. So we use data from that investment life cycle to say, is our system of work working? Do we have indicators in there where we need to change or make things better or worse? This is a poster that we just recently presented. I think it's going to be at the Michigan IT Symposium as well, if you want to see some details on this. But we use data to reinforce the why and the how, not as the means at the end. But we'll then say, all right, how are we doing across all of our demands and projects? If we understand what our purpose is, are we on track with where that purpose is within our systems of work? So we let data flow through all of these things as a way to stay aligned to our definitions of winning. And it goes all the way down into some of our classes go down into very, very subtle details of when you're resolving a task, what are the behaviors we're looking for of confirm, persist, and resolve. Err on the side of closing it out. You can always open it back up. We'd rather finish the race than stand at the finish line and ask for permission to close off. These are all just little samples of things that are in some of our curricula for how we teach our staff what we do. And how we always pull it back to that customer experience about how do we think through what our customer is looking for. So that systems of work is really foundational to letting people, you can be wherever you want, as long as you're working in that system of work. That's where the work is. It's not in the office that we stand in, it's in the places that we work together. Second thing we think is really important to teach is problem solving. I think the most important thing about enabling people to work remotely is to recognize that every barrier to somebody working remotely is simply the introduction of a problem. If you're or that needs to be solved, and the opportunity to apply creativity to that problem. I love the movie The Martian, Matt Damon, where this is kind of what that movie is all about, is every problem you run into, how do you just start working the problem and see those challenges as opportunities for creativity? Sometimes we'll cite Ray Dalio's book around principles. I just really love his statement where he says an organization is made up of culture and people. And one of his key characteristics of great cultures is they like bringing problems and disagreements to the surface and solving them well. So if that's something you want, you have to be able to teach it. So we have approaches in our classes about how do we see problems as opportunities to be creative across the organization. For example, well, the service desk can't work remotely. They need to be able to take our emergency calls to activate major incidents. It's just an opportunity for us to get creative about, well, how do we get those emergency calls to ring everyone's phone at the same time without disrupting the customer experience? And we solve that problem. So we then work on those systematically. How do we teach people to think about improvement in data? Again, an area that I know Empowering Blue is interested in. We have classes that are built around how should I use data in our systems of work to improve what we're doing and why. So we're talking about the different ways that we improve, the different types of improvement principles and processes that we follow, where improvement should be self-driven and continuous and something that we're working on together that data enhances. It's not that we're trying to fix something, it's that we're always trying to improve. But also, how do we make space for ourselves to reflect and orient and get curious in the right way around the way that we solve problems? So we teach this across the organization, and we celebrate the successes when we're learning and we're making things better. So you'll see there's just a number of different examples of just some artifacts from some of the coursework that we set aside time for our staff to go through to be able to talk about how do I embrace and continually evolve performance. And the last thing we talk about needing to teach is change. So how do we lead change? How do we connect people to the story of the future and able to enable us to change the order of things? And here I will use my absolute favorite quote. I think this kind of captures more of what we believe in business IT than anything else, which is this, and it absolutely applies to how we were successful in remote work. There's nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Because the reformer has enemies and all those who profit by the old, and only lukewarm defenders and those who would profit by the new. And you guys all know this, you're change management pros. This lukewarmness of the defenders of the new arises partly from fear of adversaries and partly from the incredulity of mankind, who do not truly believe in anything new until they've had the actual experience of it. So people wouldn't have believed we could work remotely before we all went home and started working remotely, and then said, oh, well, actually, I think this can work. We try and get ahead of that for all those things that are coming in the future, recognizing that the biggest story of change management is that the new doesn't have that many defenders, and we have to create those experiences and really take a strong stance and a strong leadership backs up to see it come to fruition. So I'll pause and just say, think about who you think this quote is from. And I will then tell you, I'm going to guess you didn't get it right because it was Niccolo Machiavelli from the 16th century. This has been true for a long time, and it continues to be true. And I think this just captures the challenge that we all experience out there. And really, that comes from first investing in the people across the organization. So we try and make a big point across all of the things that we do in HITS to acknowledge that we are a people business, serving people and run by people. We happen to be a technology organization because those are the tools that we use to connect those people together and to serve the organization. But you will see a lot of time and space made in what we do to celebrate and to acknowledge and to grow people in the roles that they're in. And to the bottom right here is a picture of our events team planning our annual picnic, really making space for that kind of joy that comes from working well together. And we believe in that space, working well together and having fun, we can do some things that change the world. So it's kind of the final story. When we went, our COVID NPS score has been on an upward trajectory for a long time as we've been working on this across the organization. But you'll see this jump from a 47 NPS to a 72 was during that quarter that we all started working remotely for COVID. That our ability to go from an on-site service desk and on-site operations to a fully distributed organization rolling out dramatic changes in technology, that was the biggest jump we've ever had in how our customers felt about us. And I think that that was because we had set up that organization that understood our purpose, understood flexibility, and we were ready for the challenges that came because these systems of work had been implemented. Our approach to creative problem solving had been established in our foundation, and our ability to teach that continuous improvement made space for us to be able to flourish in that story of going remote. So that's kind of the summary here. My thoughts on how you really instantiate and support long-term a flexible organization is to make sure you've developed purpose, concrete vision, and a good leadership backstop for the culture you're looking for, and then teach how people work together in common systems of work with common problem solving and how to lead change, because change is the constant that we will never get away from anymore. So I hope that's been useful. And I've got a little bit of a breakout here. I'll pause here and say, do you want me to introduce the breakout question discussion, or do you guys want to do that?
You can introduce it, Michael. I think we're going to skip the breakout rooms and just do it as one big group here, though, but do the same prompt and we'll ask the questions directly to you.
Perfect. Okay, so the challenge is I really embrace this idea of how do we teach creativity. So the prompt we had come up with, and I knew I was going to go around time, my apologies there, is what elements of remote daily work continue to be a challenge for you or your teams that pushes you or challenges you? And the idea we're actually coming up with here is a Stump Michael challenge. So we wanted to see if you could come up with a sticky problem that you're experiencing, one that's persisted, and use it as an example of what we would approach given the experiences that we've gone through to address any sticky challenge that's come up inside the organization.
I'm willing to stick my neck out first here, if that's okay, Michael.
Hey,
yeah, hi. Thank you so much. Great presentation. And it might have been addressed in one of the slides, but one of the things that we found is that when people started to have some people on site and some people off site, that collaboration became that much more challenging. And so I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how you've addressed that.
Yeah, so hybrid has definitely been a part of what, some organizations have been hybrid from day one. So we've been a little bit fluid back and forth between the two, where the service desk was on site before we were able to get them all remote. We've had trainers go on site before we could figure out how to do all of our stuff virtually. What we started to embrace was that being on site wasn't any different than being remote, and that the idea was to not make the same assumptions that when you're remote that you might make in person. So for example, a lot of folks have said, well, don't we need a completely different conference room for the 5 people that are on site to go into the conference room to be able to connect over video to connect with the remote people? And we pause and say, well, let's expose some assumptions. You're assuming you have to get together in the conference room. Is there something that's different about the content of this meeting than it was when you were at home that requires you to go in the conference room? And they're like, oh, so what we've actually found for hybrid, for example, is stop thinking about conference rooms as defining how meetings happen and think about meetings as exactly what we're seeing here. So I do about 1 day a week now on site, and a few other people do the same. We just stay in our offices or at our cubicles or at the desk you happen to be working on, put on headsets, and just stay in the same mode that's been successful rather than introducing a variable that prevents that success from happening. Now, we have had some instances where okay, it's a stand up this time and we want to do it a little bit differently. But it's been also the assumption of don't sit down in that room. If the camera can't see everyone when they sit down, can you stand in a place that you can be seen and go, and people go, oh, I'm just falling into habits about how I've always done things rather than pausing and reflecting on what the purpose of that thing was. But I will say the biggest thing for us has been keep using the technology in the way that it's been successful. Don't change the interaction because you're physically changing the space. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's been one of the ways we think about it is be aware of your assumptions. How about others? Other challenges you guys are experiencing as things unfold and evolve? And maybe I'll ask a question back to the group here, one that I'm actually struggling with a little bit. So one of the things we're really focusing on this year is well-being and how are we doing okay? One of the things we're really trying to embrace is that there are people in your organization, there are probably people on the call right now that are not doing okay. I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. So I think that's good medicine for the world right now. But one of the questions is, well, how do we know when people are doing okay or not doing okay? Like I'm very enthusiastically embracing, we've got a new product that's rolling out with Microsoft Teams called Viva Insight, where you just a little smiley face down to a frowny face check-in every day that gives you a little self-reflection. But there's some really interesting questions of when is it that I need to be worried because I haven't heard from a teammate that's working remotely and hasn't connected in? Is there a form of wellness check that's appropriate organizationally, or are they just sick and they forgot to call in that day? That's one we haven't gotten a really great answer for yet. We've had some where, oh yeah, my power was out. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. How do you check in on somebody that's remote when you can't walk over and see if they're in their office? That's been a one that we don't have a really great answer for. I'm curious if anyone here has figured that out yet.
I'd like to speak to that. Again, thank you, Michael. This has been amazing. We also were doing the daily check-in type of thing, just check in with people. How are you doing? But one of the things upon reflection is that we've become aware that everyone, each individual has they fall somewhere on the spectrum of high needs. They need a lot of connection and attention to feel healthy, as you've been terming it. And then we have folks who are quite happy to not talk to anyone all day. They're just really independent. They're self-sufficient. They don't need that regular contact. And our struggle with this, and I don't have an answer for it, is just trying to find common ground to deal with this spectrum of individual needs, even within one team, let alone across the department. Because sometimes when you set up those connection points, people at the other end of the spectrum who don't need that, they feel like you're wasting their time. And it's been a real struggle trying to find something that is going to work for the whole team.
We found it a little interesting to explore the idea of team health versus individual health, where our rituals for the team are for the team. So for example, we'll do stand-ups. A lot of our teams do daily or weekly stand-ups. And those stand-ups, we try and make it an open discussion to not assume, to design the experience of that stand-up to say, what are we getting out of this? Is this, I want to only deal with blockers and then separate? Or is this, let's check in emotionally with each other from an emotional well-being standpoint? And how do we do that in the right measure? So that's one element that we've explored a little bit is just being intentional about those stand-ups, but also to make it okay to pull the cord. I see some of my quality folks thinking about the Kanban. You can pull that cord not because I've got a technical issue or a financial issue or a resource issue, but I'm just, I need some help on this one, or in making it okay and normalizing some of that asking for help without it being asking for the entire team's help. Because we think everyone's going to fluctuate. And we will sometimes do, a lot of times in our huddles, we'll say, how are you doing today? Are you green, yellow, red? And you don't have to explain why. You could be green because I got a whole bunch of candy sitting right there that I get to eat today. Or I could be red because there's a whole bunch of candy sitting right there bothering me today. You don't have to ever explain why. But if you say, I'm pretty green today and somebody else is red, we'll actually try and connect them together a little bit to say sometimes your source of abundance can help somebody else with their source of deficit, and really try and encourage that connectivity across the team, but also to make it okay to talk about, I don't need all that. I'm good. And that doesn't mean I'm disengaging. I'm good. versus I really need a little bit more of that connection. And we're a big enough organization at Michigan or in HITS or in business IT that there should be the right matching of those different needs across the organization, but it starts from making it okay to talk about it. That's actually where we put a lot more of our managerial time. Managers' jobs aren't to execute projects and make sure tickets are getting closed. Managers' jobs are to make sure that people in the organization are okay.
We had one question come in during the chat that I think we have time to address. So how do we keep people's engagement during Zoom sessions where participation makes or breaks the quality of the meeting? For example, how do you keep people from doing other things during the meeting?
Well, probably don't invite Michael if you don't want somebody to just talk the whole time. He's a little chatty. No, I will say the way I often approach this, because I think back to a former world where we were in person and people would say, everyone laptops down. And this is my personal philosophy. It's not for everybody. But to me, if the goal of the meeting is engagement, it's kind of on the organizers of the meeting to design it for engagement. So we've sometimes had some challenges in saying, well, are we again intentional about what the outcome is? Sometimes a meeting is a great big inform. And we do like to ask the question of, can't that just be an email if it's not bi-directional? But to me, it's again making it okay to speak up. Just like we talked about, it's okay to speak up for wellness. You should be okay to speak up and say, I'd just like to toss a flag and say, I feel like this could be structured differently, or I feel like I could make some more time for discussion. And how do you again get past the assumptions and make sure the team has a safe place to raise that? I will say the burden of engagement is hard. And I think one of the best things to do is to make meetings as small as focused as you can be, so you don't end up with that multi-purpose issue. But the flip side is it's also okay if somebody's looking at Amazon a little bit during a meeting, as long as the larger picture of what we're looking for is okay. We should acknowledge that there's spaces in our togetherness for things like that, so long as the team as a whole is healthy. But I think that's one of the challenges that's just always going to be out there, but that's if we're in person or not. Whether you're looking at your phone or whether you're looking at another screen, that's always going to be a challenge.
Okay, well, we are out of time, Michael, but thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. I'm very glad that I got to hear it, so thank you so much. Just as a reminder to everyone, the next Empowering Blue meeting is December 7th at 10 a.m. And information about that will be available on the Empowering Blue site before that session. So thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Casey, I think we had one question. I was just going to try and follow up afterwards from Ashley. So I'll see if I can do that. I think that was the only thing I see in the thread. And I see great resources. Kevin, thank you for sharing those.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. We'll put those in with the materials that go up on the site with the Fast Five and stuff. So
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Carl, for the prep.